Hi, and welcome to the New Property Show. I'm Steve McMenamin. In this show, Nicole will report back to us on her success with her display home village. Goro will be joining us, who's a property leading expert. He's going to talk to us about a winning mindset and how to accelerate growth in property. Ian Carey from MTA Mortgage Brokers will be giving us an insider scoop on where the industry is going. David Woods from Harmac Homes will be discussing what's happening with builders all over Victoria currently at the moment. And finally, our panel to close the show. Thanks for joining us, Nicole. So welcome back to the New Property Show. Last time we spoke, you were about to head out to the display villages. How'd you go? What was your research and what were your first impressions?
Thanks, Steve. Well, I was only able to go during the week, and I felt that was probably a good exercise because most people would generally go on the weekend, but others may need to go during the week. So I got onto the Google machine to see who was opened, where I could go. I chose the West to go to for my first excursion. So I had a little Google around, saw who was open, and I headed out there. However, sadly when I got there, even though about 8 of them said that they were open on the website, there was only 2 that were open. So that was a little bit disappointing. So I would definitely recommend prior to setting off to, well, at least during the week, to give them a call just to make sure that they are actually open.
So how far had you roughly driven?
It was about 45 minutes, so it wasn't too far.
Still a big exercise, and I guess if you're weighing up weekdays versus weekends, you'd normally assume people that have more time during the week to see you, but sadly if they're not open, it's also a challenge as well. What would you do differently now, having been through that experience? What's the number one tip there?
Well, I would definitely call ahead rather than just arriving and make sure that there was someone there to see me.
So lastly, when you arrived at the display home village, you've got out, I've assumed you've walked up and down the street. What did that feel like as a customer? Did it feel exciting and enticing? You're about to build a brand new home. You could see all the facades and the landscaping. What were your thoughts on that?
To be completely honest, the first one I went to was probably underwhelming because most of them were closed. I didn't feel that there was a lot of infrastructure around that particular development. I did see one builder and they were fantastic. The gentleman that was there, the salesman, was great and he was very helpful and insightful. However, that particular estate is actually, they're vacating that on the 15th of December, so the display homes that they're operating out of are actually going back to the people that purchased them at the time, and that won't be a display village anymore. So they'll continue building other stages in that complex. So I felt there wasn't probably enough infrastructure in that particular one for my liking, as in shops, gyms.
So early stages of this subdivision. So
yes.
There can also be a problem, I guess, as a customer going out there. I guess if you're comparing to some villages, they're quite exciting, and some villages can be, as you said, a little bit underwhelming. I'd love to hear back from you on a further episode with what's, I guess, how your quotes went, your first impressions in terms of walking into those displays, and what happened from there. So, Nicole, thanks for joining us on the New Property Show. We'll see you again soon.
Thanks, Steve.
All right, we are joined by Goro here. You've got a lot of experience around property, running a few different companies. Wanted to bring you on this show. You've been building property yourself and wealth now for a long time. What's happening in the market? What are people buying? And what's this cash flow positive stuff that you keep talking about on your websites?
Thanks, Steve. So across all my companies, I have a primary focus on high cash flow, ethically invested property. What we're finding at the moment with interest rates going up, and just recently we've had the cash rate is up at 3.1%, which is the highest rate we've had in 10 years. So people are looking for products with yield of 4, 5%, 6% plus, because the average yield here in Melbourne for any investment property is 2.8%, right? Which is peanuts. That doesn't pay the mortgage. That's highly negatively geared, and you know what? These days, negatively geared, it's great, but it doesn't add wealth in the long term.
So cash flow is king.
Yes.
What do these properties consist of? What do they look like? So typically I'm looking and selling a 4-bedroom home or a dual key. What are you doing that's a little bit different with a typical house nowadays? How are you converting that into more yield?
Great question. So what we're doing now is that our primary focus is Victoria, and Victoria's got very stringent rules. Unlike Queensland, where you can do a dual key, where you can get significantly higher rents, and there's a rental shortage there. We're doing it differently in Victoria, our home state, so to speak, right? 7 years ago, we decided we needed to change exactly everything we did and move it across to things that had high cash flow, but also have an ethical component to investing. So there's 2 forms of ethical investing we focus on. The number one form is what most people now know as co-living, shared accommodation. We have that in 4, 5 and 6 bedroom models. I know others out there trying to do 9 bedrooms. There's some challenges with that, and we can talk about that later. But we're basically allowing people to live in shared accommodation, and with the right property management, we can get anywhere from our lowest rent is $825 a week, and our highest rent is in excess of $1,600 a week just for the shared accommodation.
Phenomenal. So these individual leases, or they one lease, so for example, 5-bedroom home, 5 different tenants, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Who pays the water, who pays the gas, who pays the electricity? So that's the responsibility typically of what, the landlord,
That's
and then they just charge out a set fee?
Yes, so the landlord pays for the bills, and the set fee's already incorporated into the initial rent, because the kind of person that wants to live there, say 6 months, 1 year, even 2 years, they don't want the hassles of worrying about the bills. They just want a set fee, kind of like, almost like living in a hotel, for lack of a better term.
Thanks for joining us on the New Property Show. Look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thanks, Steve.
What are some of the clients that you're dealing with nowadays in the traditional mum and dad market? Do you want to talk to us a little bit about property portfolios? What's happening is all the money coming into Victoria, the people diversifying. Where's the market going?
Well, in general, people that want to build a property portfolio, it's really tough. I'm a seasoned property investor myself, and with interest rates going up, the regulations increasing, lending is getting more and more difficult. So people are having to go from more, building a property portfolio to the more seasoned, investors now. What they're doing, and myself included, is you have to turn property over.
Yeah,
it's the only way if you really want to go forward.
So money really is energy; it needs to be turned over.
Correct.
So I just want to go just a quick couple of questions for you. That'll be, what do you think is happening with the interest rates in 2023? First one, and if you're doing finance nowadays, P&I or interest only. So over to you first, if we can, please, V. So what's happening in 2023, and are you P&I or interest only?
Well, I can see that the rates are going to stabilize soon, because it has already broken back a few customers with the rate rise who are used to paying the repayments with 2.5%, and now all of a sudden they're bumped up to 5.5%. So it's, on an average, they're going to pay $1,000 more every month. So it has to stabilize.
Yes.
As you can see from the last rate rise, that the rates were going up by 0.5%, every first Tuesday of the month, and the last increase was 0.25, so that shows a positive sign that they're going to slow down. We recommend our customers to pay principal and interest. If you have the capacity to pay principal and interest, you should keep reducing your debt. But our strategy is to have all your investment properties on interest-only term, and then make sure that you keep pumping your cash flow into your home, because you want to have a lower debt on your existing home than the investment properties.
If you were back at 21 right now, what would your next move be?
Yeah, really good question. So look, I think I'm going to agree with V. Interest only, where where the strategy is right,
and then pay down your property.
Pay down your property, but the banks or the lenders want to see that you're encouraging to pay down the debt. So any application with a lender is going to have a lot more strength and backing when you're showing that you want to do some type of principal interest. Gone are the days
basically
where
showing you can afford it.
Exactly.
And 21-year-old version of Kerry, what would his next move be?
Well, from a savings point of view, if
Yeah.
you don't have a lot of equity,
Yeah.
I'm going to say go out there and work your arse off. If
Yeah.
you have to get 2, 3, 4 jobs, and that's
I 100% agree with you. Go on. Yes.
you need to do that. Yeah,
More than 40 hours in a week.
that's correct. Yeah.
I think
yeah.
double down.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm going to hear from you.
Yeah.
Double down, work more jobs.
Yeah.
From you, pay off as much debt as you can off your principal place of residence. Guys, I want to thank you so much for joining us on the New Property
good.
Show. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're joined by David Woods from Harmac Homes. Thanks, Dave, for coming on the New Property Show.
Thanks, Steve.
Harmac Homes, so how long have you guys been around?
Yeah, so Harmac Homes, we started about approximately 3 years ago now. And it's been interesting 3 years, obviously launching at the start of COVID, getting through builder bonus, and now to where we are with interest rate hikes.
So Builder Bonus was the $25,000 incentive that
Correct,
was
yep.
put out there. I'm sure it's been a turbulent 3 years. Prior to Harmac Homes, I guess, where did you yourself and your directors come from?
80 years experience that we have across the team for Harmac Homes. So even though we're sort of small, around that 300 homes per year currently, some of the best leadership skills and team that we've got in the industry, which is fantastic to be
It's
working
all about
with.
I guess, a formidable team. We normally look at this from a customer's point of view, but what are some of the key tasks that a sales consultant would need to be across nowadays? Because with this show, we're trying to present from walking to a display to getting a quote to paying a deposit. But really, what should be 3 to 5 things that a sales advisor should be across before being qualified to be sitting in a display home nowadays?
I think the change in the industry in the last
Yeah.
sort of 4 to 5 years is land is getting smaller, and that is due to the affordability. Res code, so understanding whether it's north facing, south facing. Previously, 10, 15 years ago, you're building on a 600 square block, not a problem, you just move it off the boundary and would be fine. The issue that they're facing now is that we have small blocks that have half a metre of fall or a metre of fall, and the consumer thinks that because the block's cheap, the package will be cheap, but it's a site cost, and understanding that. So we really try to educate almost as a mini draftsman, mini estimator in many ways. So before they go out and sit in a display, they need to understand the costs of these, and having box guttering on boundary and wall and height on boundary. And the reason is because it's not fair on the consumer 12 months, 18 months down the track when you go for your permits, and we have all these dispensation issues. So we really want to try and minimise that from the start. So product knowledge is key.
So they're specialists in the land and orientation, and obviously how much percentage the building envelope can take up.
Correct.
So almost like a 70% of the building envelope and 30% left for backyard and front yard. Then you've got setbacks. So this is basically setbacks are, for example, how far a car can go in and out, and the setback from the, from the front window to the footpath.
Yep.
Apart from land, what would you also say is part of the building experience? So there's colour, we've talked about colour consultancy before and going through that. So what's a typical client, how long do they spend in a colour gallery nowadays? And what's sort of the upsell that's sort of involved there?
I think they vary. They really do vary. We have consumers coming in now that, or the clients that come in that will have a 2 hour, 3 hour colour appointment, and they're happy. They want the display as it is. And we have other clients that are 2 to 3 days, depending on wants and needs. And you'll see them throughout the journey where it might be 2, 3, 4, 5 attempts before they're really happy with their colours. But as we grow as a brand and as the displays grow, the colour palettes change, the upgrades start to come through, and the clients change. So we're seeing at the moment with our displays where we've more to that second, third home buyer, and obviously led by the changes in the industry, and that's probably in regards to supply. But who would have thought we're putting in gold taps back in homes again, and black is still in.
Yeah.
Black has been in for 5 years now. So, and we don't see it changing.
With that said, so I guess last question will be time on site. We spoke earlier privately about the building times have been extended. Would you mind just sharing with us sort of what was happening 4 to 5 years ago compared to now? And we'll just speak broadly across both yourself and all builders.
Yeah, so historically, we majority would run around that sort of 100 build days. We're now seeing 160, 170. upwards of 365 days for some builders, and that's due by obviously trades, suppliers, but we are starting to see a shift back. Us personally, we've just completed one just under 100 days, which is a fantastic milestone for our business to know that we're back on track and we're dealing with those suppliers and those trade issues. And it all comes down to, I suppose, there's more work at the back end in the office than probably what is on site for your call-ups, where you might be ordering a frame 5 weeks from the frame even being delivered. So it's just been on top of
So
those
systems
suppliers.
and processes have become super important now. Dave, thanks so much for joining us on the New Property Show. Question now is, you've built your first property. How do you go about building a property portfolio?
I'll start with this one if you like. I think one of the benefits of having a delay in a build is that the longer the delays are, the higher, hopefully, the value of your property will get to because of the time difference, and therefore hopefully the more equity you have to play with in your property. So you might be either choosing to live in the property as owner occupied, or you might be choosing to rent it out as an investment. And by the time that you have somebody living in that house finally, you've probably got enough equity in there to look at getting another property, which if you've got enough serviceability to do so, that could be a really good stepping stone to do so.
I think another thing which we covered up in the last episode is don't over leverage yourself. So if you're going to be buying your first owner occupied property and you can borrow up to $1 million, maybe consider not to max it out to $1 million, because if you do that, it's going to be very hard to buy your next property.
And that's something we say when we sit down with our clients at the very beginning is, what do you want now? And what do you want in 3 years? What do you want in 5 years? What do you want in 10 years? Because if we have just what you want to do now, you might be stuck in a couple of years when you get that property bug.
You've built your first property, but really just not aiming, literally reaching for the moon straight away. Is just keeping the project smaller and then I guess multiplying those out. What about you, Katie? What would you recommend in terms of building a property portfolio? You've dealt with you obviously dealt in the custom build, so I'd imagine that some of your clients have bought a few established properties there. So what have they done to get where they're at now?
I guess, like everyone else, most of the people I work with are really successful people in whatever they do, and a lot of that is through property investment and having a portfolio, if you like. And I think in terms of creating special homes that hold a lot of meaning to you, I think maybe when you are getting on a roll with accumulating your investment is choosing ones that you think you can transition into your dream home eventually if you choose or want to do that. So while you're choosing properties, there might be, you know, the tiny house on the big block of land that isn't what you want, but maybe as well as building a portfolio is when it really starts rolling, being smart about which ones you choose so you can actually turn it into something that you want it to be, something more special for you.
What about you, Intouch? What do you think?
Oh, thank you for asking this question. I think, in my view, that building a portfolio depends on once you have already a home now, that's your home, and and then investing money or buying a second property. I think people should look for the growth corridor. Is what I would say, and you can always get this information from online or Google though. So don't buy the property just because you love that area and you're gonna go and buy the property. I think now that the online and social media is so clever and agents you can work with it, you buy the property in growth corridor. I would say definitely from CBD to 25 kilometres, no matter which part of the city you go in Australia or any in the world, growth corridors are where you should be investing. You're making second home or investing it, and I think that the price will go up. The smart thing is if you can buy property from any land developer, or you can get a longer settlement, because sometimes that people have run down house and you make a good price, and you can have for example for 9 month settlement, 6 month settlement. Well, you can make a really good money out of it, because now 6 months can give enough time to do your planning and permits and engineering and so forth. So when you buy a property called a land, if you're buying a property in a paddock, you buy a land. When you have plans and permit, it become a project. So bank will give you more money against the project, not against the land. Because if they were to replace it, you get more money, they can get more against the project. So I would say this is what I've done it now. I always buy a property for 2-year, 3-year, 5-year settlements. And Victoria is a great place to buy properties. I'm not sure about the other states, but definitely you go for longer settlement. Even though you need to pay a little bit more, you pay more, but you're buying a time. And within the time, you are the beneficiary of the time. Because quite often, property market or property price will go up.
So I think where I guess you and I would agree is that you should always be ready for your next deal. So you have one home, if we're, I guess, multiplying, you have one home under construction and you already have your next deal in the making. I guess you guys would see that as well. But how many houses do you think people should own in 5 years?
Oh, well, I would say this other thing is now,
Yeah.
once you have one house now, that's for your family, for yourself. Second house is just about trade more. A rotation will make you the money. Because I've seen some people, they just love it. You know what? I've got a house now. I've got a property and sitting in XYZ suburb. I said, why would you be? Why not sell it and buy another one? Because I treat the money, it's like a taxi. Money should work for you. If you got a taxi, for example, at home, sitting at it, when he's not earning anything, right? So my way of doing it now, I would transact quick. As long as I'm making money, no matter how much I'm making it, as long as I'm making it, I'll go to the next transaction, third and fourth transaction. The number of people who have become quick rich or can be rich, the way you do more transactions. Of course, you pay tax and all that, but it doesn't really matter in the day. It's all about moving it. Mm-hmm. And do not afraid if you need to take a loan, because if you path in a journey of making yourself road to millionaire, the best way you do it, have assets, and against the assets, you take a loan.
We talked about earlier too, cash flow. I guess the question would then lead into capital growth versus cash flow in terms of accelerating wealth. Which way would you go?
Me personally,
Yeah.
I like cash flow.
Mm-hmm.
I think cash is king, cash is oxygen, cash makes your day go by. I like that due to the fact where you have a secondary income coming through, and generally when you do have a cash flow property, you start seeing you get the property bug because you want more, and you want more. Obviously, if you can go for both, great. But my personal opinion is cash flow. Yeah.
I'd agree with that. I think many years ago, even some of the strategy I applied, I used to I go for assets. And the issue with assets is you're holding those, and if the market goes down, you can't always sell straight away. But with cash flow, it's always going to be a continuing force. So whether you have a job or didn't have a job, and one of the things I noticed for the last 2 years is I was getting less calls from people that had income-producing properties versus people that might have an asset worth 10 million, but they've still got to pay it off. They have the 10 million on paper, they owe 5 million, you think they're in a good position, they've still got to service that $5 million debt. So I think the key is I guess we'll ask one more question there would be, so what about value adding a property? So we always keep thinking about more and more and more. Maybe one of the suggestions I would make is buying a large block of land and then doing a thing called a subdivision. Let's touch on that just for a second. Got any experience in subdivisions?
Yeah, well, we've done pretty well in that. So we've always purchased properties with a big block of land on there, with the understanding that we can build 1 or 2 units in the near future. So that can be a strategy over there. Another one could be land banking. So buying a block of land bank it, get it DA approved, and obviously chopping it up.
For the people that don't know, what's land bank?
Land bank is you purchasing a block of land, and you're going through the process to speak to council to get the property rezoned, to get it DA approved, so you can have one big block, and you might be able to cut it up into 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 different blocks, and obviously leverage through your sales.
But thank you for joining us tonight on the New Property Show.